Thanks for having the All Things Oz Museum here. And before we go into the presentation that I have and talk comics, I want to make sure I introduce Ethan Tarshish and Kelly Brown, the two creators of the Woe is Oz series. So they're joining us today, which we're very excited about. And we're gonna get to your comics, guys, I promise. But I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna go way back in my Wayback Machine, if you will, to an earlier time and talk about kind of the way that the Oz comics came about. But first, you have to have the history lesson, because, you know, all good Comic-Cons start with a history lesson from the old bald guy, right? So we'll do that here too. The great news is it'll be short. So I am, my name is Marc Baum. I'm the Foundation Secretary of the International L. Frank Baum and All Things Oz Historical Foundation. We run the All Things Oz Museum and the Ozstravaganza Festival, and here in Chittenango, New York, which is where L. Frank Baum was born. In doing this museum, I'm on our board. I've been on the board since the beginning. I've been here about 12 years with the organization. The museum's been here about 7 now, 7 going on 8. And being here, we all have kind of our different specialties. And I've always been kind of the quirky, offbeat Oz. If you want to know every little detail about the 1939 movie, I am not your guy. If you want to know all about the first book in 1900, I'm not your guy either. I've read them, but that's not my passion. I handle things that are outside the normal mainstream Oz. I handle all the comics. I handle all the original artwork that we get. I handle the Wiz display that we have. We have one of 2 permanent Wiz exhibits in the nation next to the Smithsonian African American Museum. So we got a lot of things going on here a lot of the time. And like I said, we all kind of specialize. If you want to know everything there is to know about the 1939 film, then we've got a lady named Elise. She's the one to talk to. So we got a lot of different things going on. So I'm the comic book guy. So when there's a comic book thing that comes up, they push me out in front and say, here, go talk about this for a little while. So today I get to. And let's see if I can share my screen. Can you see my screen? It just says Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a minute it'll say something else, but right now it's just Zoom. Let's see. How about if I pick the right disk drive and we do that one? Oop. Hey, everyone can see that? It's got our nice logo at the top. Or can you?
I'm still seeing the Zoom page. I don't know if that's
yeah, same here.
Okay, let's try this. Share screen and pick that one.
There we go. That looks nice.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk for an hour and you guys just watch a screen that says Zoom. That's what could go wrong? All right, so anyone who wants to chime in, I think everyone can unmute themselves and go, but if not, that's fine too. Just put something in the chat there and we'll look at it. Ethan and Kelly, I'm going to lean on you throughout this thing, and we're going to talk all kinds of stuff. Woe is Oz, I guess. And so we'll go, but we'll get started with the Northern Onondaga Public Library and us presenting Oz in Comics. There we go. And it all started right here in 1900. I'm curious, can you guys see your little icons on the right here? Or is that off? Can you just see my screen? Like, can you see this whole picture?
I see like speaker view kind of thing here. Is that what you're asking?
Do you see the wonderful Wizard of Oz picture?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Just checking to make sure. So in 1900, actually in 1899 he wrote it, but in 1900, Lyman Frank Baum writes The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and things would never be the same, right? Here's a guy from Chittenango, New York, grew up in the Syracuse area, and he writes The American Fairy Tale. And he wrote it because he didn't like the Grimm fairy tales that were coming out, so that he thought they were a little dark for children. Although if you've ever read the 1900 Wonderful Wizard of Oz, it has some dark points. But he wrote a book and he wanted it to be inclusive. There's no prince that comes in and saves Dorothy and the gang. It's a misfit ragamuffin troupe that he gets together that defeat not one but two witches, and at the end find their way home. And that's really what the books kind of are about in theory. There's a lot that goes on through the course of 14 books that Baum wrote, 40 books altogether that are officially in canon. And then everything else from there on out is, there's a lot of other Oz, as the characters are in public domain, that are out there. But after the success of the book, Baum thought it was one and done, and he was kind of done with that story. And in 1902, they made a musical based on the book. And it opened on Broadway at the Majestic Theater in 1903. And started in 1902, went to Broadway in 1903, opened at the Majestic, which in 1975 is where The Wiz would also open, which is kind of neat. And the musical was an instant hit. It actually played for 7 years on Broadway and on tour. And it was so popular that in 1904, Baum said, okay, I'm going to write more books. And when the second book came out in the spring of 1904, it was extremely popular, which led to the first comic of Oz. And this was comic strip at the time. In 1904, there was a comic strip that started, and you can see an example of a page here, Queer Visitors from the Marvelous Land of Oz. And that tied in. The second book was called The Marvelous Land of Oz. So Baum wanted to tie this all together, right? L. Frank Baum wrote this series. There were 26 series or episodes, issues, if you will, that came out of this. And he wrote them, and they were published weekly in newspapers all across the nation. And so it was a kind of neat start to Oz. And you can see some of the characters here. This one focuses on the Wogglebug. H.M. Wogglebug T.E. is the name of the character because he's highly magnified and thoroughly educated. Wogglebug lived in a university and lived near the magnifying projector that the professor used. So he had all this knowledge built up. Also, you can see Jack Pumpkinhead in here. And I think the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman are in here as well. So some neat things that go back as far as 1904 for Oz Comics. So it's not a new thing at all. Fast forward a few years to 1960. In 1960, The Visitors from Oz came out. In this book, Dick Martin compiled 11 of the 26 comic strips from the Queer Visitors and put them in this book. So people who didn't get the comics at the time, or a generation who had children or maybe grandchildren of their own who grew up reading those comics, could now see them again in print, which was kind of an unheard of thing at the time. Up until 1960, there weren't really books that accumulated comics and put them together. So that was a kind of new fancy thing to do. Dick Martin gets a lot of credit for that. He actually drew a lot of the illustrations in the book, but most of it was pre-drawn illustrations from the comic strip. And then we go to 1978, and if you're a comic book fan, this is the best of the best. In 1978, Marvel and DC worked together for the very first time. Interestingly, again, if you're kind of a comic book nerd like me, you always think of 1979 as being the big Superman versus Spider-Man crossover. This was a whole year before it. Marvel and DC agreed to do 3 comic books based in the Oz universe, the Marvelous Wizard of Oz, Marvelous Land of Oz, and then a third one, The Road to Oz. And they published these 2 oversized books, which you can see here at the All Things Oz Museum, and then quit. As it turns out, the creative teams at Marvel and DC that were working on this project didn't get along at all. And after the second book, they decided that it just was not worth the money and the hassle to put out a third one. So they actually abandoned the project. When they abandoned the project, the team from Superman reached out to Stan Lee and said, we'd like to do a Spider-Man-Superman crossover. What do you think? And Stan said yes. And then Marvel said, no, you're absolutely not doing that. And Stan Lee said, well, then I'm taking all my rights and going elsewhere. And voila, 1979 had Superman and Spider-Man. But that it all started with Oz. See, Oz bringing people together after all those years. In 1986, we get into some fun stuff where Oz kind of was creeping back into the consciousness, I would say. So 1939 was when the MGM film came out. And of course, it was wildly successful eventually. But it had a rough start. In 1939, the film came out, and then World War II broke out. So it opened up over the next 10 years in different countries. So it really kind of had a slow start up and go. And then, as was the time, you didn't see it again. There was no DVD, no VHS tape, no on demand. So once it wasn't at the theater, it was just gone, out of sight, out of mind. And then in the mid 80s, a little thing called Betamax came along, and VHS tapes. For those of you who are too young, Ethan, that was a big cassette tape-like thing that you could watch movies on at home. But I remember our first VHS player that we had cost about $1,000, which was a really cheap one at the time. So it was the coolest thing ever. And The Wizard of Oz was one of the first things that came out and released. And then in 1989, seeing how many people wanted that, Warner Brothers, Turner, at the time, Turner Classic Movies, now taken over by Warner Brothers, thought this is a gold mine. We're going to re-release the film for the 50th anniversary. And everything, I mean, stuff came out of the woodwork. But a little before that, when it came out on VHS and was so popular, DC had a comic called Captain Carrot and His Amazing Zoo Crew. And this was a weird series because it was all a bunch of little shorts. They always did 2 or 3, and that was kind of like an episode for them. So they do this little arc of issues, and that was it, and it would go away. In 1986, they did Captain Carrot and His Amazing Zoo Crew in the Oz Wonderland War. Now, I know you're all very interested in what this could possibly be about. Has anyone read it? Anybody read this one? No? Okay, here you go.
No, I did. I was on mute. Oh, yeah. Oh, it was fun.
Captain Carrot, right? The Gnome King is trying to take over Oz and Wonderland, and this super jacked up superhero rabbit basically has to help stop the war so it doesn't take over. So it was trippy even for 1986, and that was right about the time, I'm dating myself, but that was right about the time I really got into comics. And so I was all over, Captain Carrot and Defenders of Donatron City and all these weird titles now that
Yes.
I had the original 4 Ashcan versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Matter of fact, funny story about those. So a few years ago, I had a health scare. I had a surgery. And I had to leave my wife a note that said, if something goes wrong and I don't make it through this, I know you're going to sell my comic book collection. And you're probably going to give it to somebody for like $200. Please, for the love of God, pull out those 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're worth a lot of money. Sell those just in a box to someone. So all the, and again, kind of the same as my position here in Oz, where I handle all the kind of outside the normal stuff. My comic book collection has always been abnormal. You won't find a run of you will find Spider-Man, but you won't find a run of Superman or the Fantastic Four, X-Men in my collection. You'll find a bunch of the oddball fringe comics, which is why when Marvel rolled out their cinematic universe, I was like a kid in a candy shop because these were all the comics I had. These are all the B and C characters, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. So really excited about that. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you like about me? No. All right. So moving on from Captain Carrot. 1986 also saw Eric Shanower, The Enchanted Apples of Oz came out. Now, if you're not familiar with Eric Shanower, the joke around, so I'm a huge Eric Shanower fan. First, let me profess my love for all things Eric. I've been a huge fan of his forever, not just because he illustrated Star Trek Deep Space Nine or Warped, which only went 19 issues, but that's okay. That was his first paid job. He actually signed my Warp comic on his first paid square out of college that he had as a job. Not because he did Star Wars series, but all those things together, the Trojan War. I mean, he has so many good titles out there. The guy has 14 Eisner Awards. And so the ongoing joke here at the museum and at the festival over the years is Eric came as a guest a couple times. And the first time they said, Eric Shanower's coming. And I said, the Eric Shanower? And they're like, yeah, he did some Oz comics. And I'm like, no, wait, stop. The Star Trek Deep Space Nine Eric Shanower, that one, Eisner Award winning Eric Shanower? And they're like, oh, maybe. I'm like, maybe? How do you not know? So yeah, it was cool. So now every time anyone says Eric Shanower and I'm around, they all go, oh, like sounds. Super funny and awkward. It was super awkward because they did it when Eric was here too. Ethan, I don't know if you were here the same year as Eric, because he's come a few years. I don't know if they were the same as you or not, but awkward. So And then he did Secret Island of Oz. And he keeps thinking he's done with Oz comics. Like every time he does something, he's like, okay, I'm not doing any more Oz. I'm on to doing other things now. And then he gets sucked back in for one more project. Right now, he and Scotty Young are doing the Marvel Oz series, which is, we just got word is picking back up, which I'm very excited about. Marvel Comics is redoing the Wizard of Oz books, and Eric's doing the writing and Scotty's doing the illustrating. So we're excited that there's new ones of those coming too. 1991, Oz Squad. This trilogy came out, and I got to tell you, I didn't read it.
Yeah.
I didn't read this until we got close now, and I don't know why it happened. Did anyone else read this trilogy? It's got,
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna tell me you wrote it or something, right? I'm gonna cry. It's like a circle trilogy. It doesn't seem to go anywhere. The art is well, you see. You can see a glowy-handed dot there, and that lion, the face on the lion, is worth it though. Actually, that's almost worth the price of the comic right there. So Oz Squad came out, didn't go anywhere. It only did 3 issues, and it was done. But that led us to another one of my heroes, Bill Bryan. And Ethan, I do think you met Bill Bryan. I think he was here the year that you were here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so Bill Bryan is my comic book god, personally. He does a lot of Batman work for DC. 1994, though, to 2002, he had this passion project that he did for Arrow Comics and Caliber. That was the Oz project. So he did 3 titles, Oz, Dark Oz, and The Land of Oz. And I'm going to tell you, the museum has a collection of original artwork from these 3 series that's in our exhibit. And Marc Baum, yours truly, also has a collection of original artwork from this, as well as some of his original Batman art, which some hangs in my office at my day job, and the rest is locked up at my house. So, big Bill Bryan fan. He is super cool in person, very laid back. He spent time with like every art student who came through. He was showing them how to draw things in perspective. He worked with one of the high school girls here, who was helping us that year at the festival for hours with just perspective and how to make legs not look like they're big sticks sticking out at you and all this stuff. It was really awesome. Good guy. These comics are great. I keep about once a year, I'll shoot him an email. Hi, how you doing? Near his birthday, happy birthday. Working on any new Oz projects, see if I can get him back in. But he's too busy doing other things right now. And on top of that, he's teaching a class at the university where he lives too. So he's a busy guy. Anyhow, my point was, I love these. Check these comics out if you haven't, especially Dark Oz if you're into a little more serious stuff. This is more of the Ethan and Kelly kind of vein of stuff. If you haven't read Dark Oz, check it out. So it's very Woe is Oz-ish. 88 and 89, I don't know why, but like 20 issues of this comic. Peter Pan and the Warlords of Oz. That's it. That's all I got on that. I don't know. I've thumbed through a few of them. It's not the Peter Pan you know. Let me just say that. They took some liberties, and it's a self-published. It's Hand of Doom Comics, and this is they do 2 titles, Peter Pan and the Warlords of Oz, and they have another title too that's super weird. So those are it's also a crossover kind of thing. 2004, Dorothy. So this was the first comic book that we saw, and this comic ran until they ran out of money, I think, because it ends on a cliffhanger a few years later. This comic was kind of the first Oz one that came out that wasn't traditionally illustrated. It was computer illustrated, and you can see that on here, kind of a more realistic Dorothy, a little more lifelike, a little less drawn. So, what did you say to me?
The Dorothy.
Matthew Baum is here.
Hi there. When I was researching the 2004 Dorothy comic, that's actually an actress or a model who plays Dorothy, and all around her, the setting and stuff is computer generated. Okay, so not only is it not computer generated, it's actually a picture that's on a computer generated background. So interesting way to do a comic, I guess. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for joining the conversation, Matthew Baum. All right, 2006, the manga. Oz the manga. This comic was short on story, but really big on art. So a lot of terrific artwork all through it.
it's kind of a weird thing as it goes in the kind of general manga comic kind of look and feel, and then it turns kind of steampunk partway through. So interesting series all around. I don't know, they still put one or two of these out every once in a while. It's kind of a haphazard thing. They just keep releasing them. And I gotta be honest with you, I haven't picked one up in a while, so I don't know if they're new stories or they're just rehashing old stories at this point. But it's been around. Hey, 14 years is a good length for to be around if you're a comic, right? 2009, Eric Shanauer is back. Marvel rolls out their wonderful Wizard of Oz. They did a little 8-episode run and then decided that's it. They're not doing it anymore. And then they put it out as a soft cover trade. And then they put it out as a hardcover. And then they said, okay, it's still selling. We'll do more. So they keep adding books. And like I said, they just announced they're doing a new book. So that's continuing series, albeit like basically one book every couple years that they're putting out. 2011, Woe is Oz. Ethan Tarshish and Kelly Brown get together and team up to make a comic book. Guys, tell us all about it, since you're here.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so this was, I'm not on mute, right? Okay. So, no. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having us. This is great. So happy to be a part of this. And just kind of watching all the other pieces that you were going through here was such a blast from the past here, where all those comics, by the way, are in my collection. So it's like I'm looking at this, I'm like, yes. Even Captain Carrot, I'm like, that's he's now back. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but he's now back. Jeff Johns brought him into the mythos, the DC mythos, and now he's part of the whole multiverse piece there. Okay, an aside. So what was Oz? My family and I would watch The Wizard of Oz every year together. We'd sit down and we'd make it a family event, and I remember having such a sense of like awe and wonder and excitement from even though, you know, after a while I knew what was going on, it was these colorful and vibrant characters and a story that was just so timeless and so incredible and so like just a quintessential journey story. And I remember after watching the movie, wanting to dig into the stories and reading the early stories, seeing that it's like there were so many more stories that were being told that had such an expansive realm of incredible characters. And I think when I would talk to friends and I talked to you know, wherever I'd go, I'd be talking about characters like TikTok. I'd be talking about characters like General Ginger and Scraps, and you know, all these characters that really resonated to me from reading these. Shaggy Man, and you know, it wasn't until seeing some of those the Dark Oz and that where they kind of touched on that again. They came in and they kind of explored those characters a little bit more, and it only kind of made my appetite for it that much more. Like, I want to see more of these stories. I want to see, you know, and so Oz kind of came from you know, amalgamation of that, where I love the tales of Oz. I love the, you know, some of these expanded dystopia kind of stories of Oz too. And I wanted to have an outlet to be able to add more layers onto some of these characters who already were so cool, and being able to kind of bring that more into the public dialogue.
Right. So tell me this. Answer me this. So you decide, you know what, I want to tell some Oz stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, what makes you say, and what, maybe this wasn't the first thing. Was the first thing, I want to do a comic? Or were you like, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do a book. I mean, how did you decide to do a comic book, a graphic novel of this?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I'd love to do every kind of way to get Oz out there is the appropriate way to get Oz out there.
Agreed.
But I mean, this was, so this took root when I was in college. The story came to me as, you know, before I had finished, and I, you know, it seemed like an appropriate route to be able to get it out into a medium. It was more cost effective, and it was, you know, able to kind of. I was also a huge comic fan, so it was like, to me, it was like I know that world well. And
so you're in your college dorm. Let me just paint the picture. So you're in your college dorm playing with your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures, and giving them Oz character names and saying, "Ooh, we could do a war. This would be great. Whoa, is Oz?" That's how I envision it in my head.
It's like you're in my room with me.
Yeah. So
yeah.
you decide to tell this story, and how does Kelly get involved?
So I had seen some of Kelly's work. I was really, when I was getting started on trying to think about the tone and the feel for how, you know, the look that I wanted this to be. I saw some of Kelly's work, and especially his creature images. Right, it was like I remember seeing there was like different animals, and it was like it was a homogenization of almost anthropomorphic, but very real looking, and but very, I guess, also elements to trying to remember, like it's like a not. Are you familiar with Invincible? Right, you know,
Mm-hmm.
There's Kirkman, and the name is just escaping me.
Ryan
Kelly, you know who I'm talking. What's it?
Ryan Otley.
Otley. Yeah. So I looked at this, and Kelly's style reminded me so much in terms of his color palette that he used as well, where it was just so vibrant, and it was so, to me, it screamed Oz. To me, it screamed like I wanted to capture the different quadrants. I wanted to capture, you know, because in Oz, there's so much that is, especially like when you think of what the film ended up doing with it, where it's like color as story itself, right? And within the books also, it's like, you know, each quadrant has its own, you know, very different feel and very, very different vibe to it. And when I was looking at Kelly's work, I just said this. I was like, I remember thinking in my head, like, I need to reach out. I need to get this going. It's got to be Kelly.
So Kelly, you get a random call or email from Ethan, and he's like, "Hey, I got this great idea. You know that 115-year-old book version with those characters."
You know about the Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I've heard things.
I think that's how I said it too, didn't I? I think I was like, "Have you heard of the story Wizard of Oz?" And that was how I.
You know, I probably would have been more freaked out if you just came to me with the original books. I'm like, what is this? What are you talking about? Oh, you mean Wizard of Oz? Oh, okay. No, it was great, man. Like the first issue, just even picking the color palette was it was pretty interesting. It just kind of like one of the things I wanted to portray in the first issue was kind of like this progression of time that happens over a day. So you see like those color palettes change up based off the time of day. So I liked how the first issue ended where Ra is standing over the Tin Man, and he's like looking at him, and it's like this kind of harsh contrast in lighting that kind of like sets the tone for the rest of the series. So I think the first issue was really fun for me because I really also enjoyed like the fight sequences, and they're like super violent, but it's just kind of how we were able to kind of capture like what would happen panel for panel.
Right. And what was Oz for the kids? What was Oz is not for the kids.
It is definitely not for the kids.
It's an adult comic.
Definitely not for the kids at all.
So tell me what you know. What I loved about these comics is the perspective. Like you didn't do this straight on. I'm looking at a frame in a comic, right? So like there's number one, you know, the cover with the lion and the perspective kind of from the ground up, and just the way the whole thing comes together. Why did you choose? I mean, what made you choose, I guess, the stylistic way that you did this book versus other things? Why didn't you do the standard, you know, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 and kind of switch it up? And how did you come up with not only that, but like the shapes, your Emerald City has those rounded tops and those really straight, almost sharp lines to it.
Yeah.
What were you thinking when you came up with that and said, this is what I imagine for this to look like?
Yeah, it was exactly mostly what it was just my own take on Oz. If I were to redraw Emerald City and if I were to draw inside Emerald City, what would that look like? And I did want to create like this different sort of metropolis kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
But even like looking back at it now, I think if I were to redo this, I'd probably do it completely differently. Because then I look at the Emerald Cities that were kind of created before. There's a lot more towers. There's a lot more things going on. Whereas mine just looks like a normal, kind of like almost like Minneapolis in a sense. As far as it goes.
Right. I kind of like the minimalistic though. I thought of it as being kind of, and you can see a little of it actually behind Ethan in his backdrop there, which is not my Emerald City that's real, but his fake one. But I kind of like that. I mean, but what I liked about a lot of the art in it was less is more. Like you got right to the point of it. I felt you got right to the point of what the story was. So I didn't have to go through pages of what are they doing? They're just showing me all this stuff to show me this stuff. It all moved the story forward. And I think when you have a comic that moves the story forward through art, that's a win, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you also got to think Ethan too, because I mean, all of these panels are just his script and how he described every panel. So it was. I think that's what made it such a good collaboration. Is just like we kind of both envision the same thing. It's like, oh, I know what you're talking about. So, you know what? I got some ideas how to like kind of make this more dynamic, and it was kind of like on the fly. Just let's figure out how this panel will look. But
I want to give credit where credit's due here, though, Kelly. I mean, I have the scripts on, I have the words on a page, but you really brought it to life in a way that is just like it's eye candy. I mean, this is going through everything here is just it's like getting. I feel like my I'm just gobbling it all up as I'm. And honestly, it's like the picture behind me here almost feels. What I liked about this originally when I first saw this was almost like it felt almost Tron-like in a sense. This extra sense of external wonder, right? Yeah. Where it's kind of fusing of different worlds, not just in the Oz that we're familiar with, but also bringing in other elements of what that exciting place could be. Because I mean, it's the vision of the film, the various films, it's all interpretations of a guiding line, but it's all very different in its own ways.
Cool. So then what made you come out with the coloring book version, the Woe is Oz? I mean, that's something that's a little outside the lines, right? For if you'll pardon the pun. What was the thought process behind, we've got a lot of decent art here that people would like to color, and it's complex and it's different and it's fun to look at, and what was it?
Well, I think part of it was just, I mean, I thought the imagery was so robust that when I think of coloring books, it's about the myriad of different colors that you're able to bring into it, and it was another touch point for the community, I think, who loves Oz, to be able to come in and be able to feel like they're creating Oz the way they would like to see it, right. It was a fun kind of piece of between the issues coming out. Also, I think at that point there was a time lapse between the issue and us getting back into this next one that'll hopefully be coming. Releasing very soon here, but
I think we're breaking news there, everybody. Yeah. Woe is Oz coming soon. Okay.
we are going to finish. Yeah, Kelly and I have been talking a lot recently about that, and reapproaching it and jumping back into finishing up that first arc, and then we've been talking also about what will be coming next. So I'll get back into that in a little bit, but that was the coloring book was largely that too. We wanted to give something back to something that would be not just for Oz, Woe is Oz fans, but also for anyone who just likes Oz and it's wants something extra and tangible to be able to play with.
Right. And Kelly, when Ethan says, "Hey, let's do a coloring book," did you have inks of these pictures that just weren't colorized, or was there a process you had to
Oh no,
decolor?
it was really straightforward. Like, I mean, with the process itself, there's an inking phase where all the pages get scanned in. It's just black and white,
Mhm.
So
So you
that's
had
part of
that
the
art.
process. Yeah, it's already kind of set up. So all I do is turn the color layer off and save out images.
Were there any that you vetoed? Did you have any veto power? Did you say, yeah, we're not using that one?
Are you asking me or are you asking Kelly?
Yeah, I'll go either, but I was asking Kelly.
Oh no, not at all.
Was,
No, it's fine. It's all open.
I mean, I just didn't know if there was like, okay, yeah, we're going to use these 16 pictures, but we're not going to use that one. That one's mine.
Oh,
How do you feel? Have you seen any of the results? I mean, I guess from the artist standpoint, how do you feel about somebody kind of redoing what you've done, right? Because you've done it, you've created this world. If you look behind you at the art that you've got on your backdrop right now, I mean, the colors and the palette, and certainly, like you said, the daytime and the different times of day, and how you moved with the coloring through that. So how is it? It's almost like working with another colorist or 1,000 other colorists who are going to do that. How did it impact you, or does it matter? Once it's done, it's done. And
when it's done, it's done. I mean, I throughout even from the time I've met Ethan, I've created so much artwork, and we stopped production like in 2012, and I it's because I got too busy. I got more into like animation, motion design kind of stuff. But I miss actually drawing, and I've been trying to get more used to the digital platforms now. So for the past 3 years, I've had an iPad Pro, so I've been drawing on that. So if we were to kind of continue production, I'll do it on that. But I still have the physical pages of issue 5 from when I started it, and it's something about that process I don't want to break. I want to continue to just draw on paper, scan it in. If I do any color work on the iPad Pro, I'll do it that way. But there's some cool shots, and I feel like that's kind of why I want to at least finish those shots,
right?
Because in the next couple of issues, there's just so much potential for great artwork.
Gotcha.
So that's why I want to kind of continue to move forward with it. So
yeah, I'm excited that you're excited about it versus like.
Gotta be, man. I've worked on a bunch of different projects where it's like, ugh.
I deal with a lot of artists with the guests and stuff that we have here, and some of them are just like, it was just a job, and I'm like, oh.
It turns into that.
That's the most depressing thing. It's like, yeah,
it's mostly because people go back and forth. They always want to kind of like art direct and micromanage every aspect of the production, which I think that's kind of what makes me and Ethan's dynamic really nice, because Ethan's like super excited about all the stuff that we do, and I'm like, all right, that encourages me, so let's continue to power through this, so.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go back to my slideshow, but I want to come back. You guys stick around, because I want to come back and talk about kind of what's next with Woe Is Oz, and throw out those original paper art before you go all electronic. Look great in a museum sometime. Just saying.
Yeah.
So along,
absolutely.
Ken Hour and Bill Bryan, and
got plenty of those.
Just saying. Okay. Here we go. And hopefully you can see the Woe Is Oz again back up there. Yes.
Yeah, I see. I'm not on mute, right?
No, you're not.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We wouldn't mute you. All right. So we'll go on to the next one here. Boom. Oh, there's the coloring book. There you go. Book volume 1. Whoop, whoop. All right, 2010, the Royal Historian of Oz came out, and this was a neat story. Tommy Kovac, who's a librarian by trade, and Andy Hirsch illustrated this. And the basic storyline. Do you have this one, Ethan? I'm curious. Do you have this series?
Oh yeah, yep. I've got this one too.
These guys, and one of them's like, I want to write an Oz story. Oz stories are big, and I can make it with an Oz story. And then they find out Oz is real. So 6 issues in this run. And it's a fun book, and I highly suggest it to anyone who doesn't have it, if you can find it. It's hard to find. We have a few copies left at the Oz Museum, but it's hard to find.
It's a good one. It's good.
2011, Legends of Oz, The Wicked West. Full disclosure, I wrote the foreword to this book when it came originally, because I am such a nerd, and I love this Western retelling of the Oz world. Tom Hutchison is the author. He uses varied artists. The cover I'm showing you is BDI is the imprint that does this book. It's Tom's imprint. This is their 10th anniversary. They're going strong. They just came out with a new Legend of Oz book, which I have sitting on my desk at home, just waiting. Actually, I have all the variant covers too. And it was, I read it digitally before I got it. Great series. It's continuing, and it's telling the Oz stories in a Western way. And it's, you know, it's cheeky good fun, right? It's Dorothy Gale goes to Oz, and she's got her faithful steed Toto and her ruby spurs on her boots. You get it. But they did some really creative things here, I thought, with characters and character structure. And what I liked so much about it is things like Jack Pumpkinhead. You know, instead of having Jack Pumpkinhead like in the Oz stories with a big pumpkin head and the thing, they thought, how can we put this in a Western setting? And Jack Pumpkinhead is a bandit with a face mask that is a pumpkin, like a jack-o'-lantern face mask, a bandana that covers his face. So they did some kind of cool things there, and that series continues. And BDI is doing great with it. And like I said, the one I showed you there is kind of a rare one, actually. They had a short relationship with Aspen Comics, maybe 6 months. Aspen did a couple reprints, and then they broke up again. It was not meant to be. But so there's a few of those floating around, which are kind of cool. 2013, if you don't have this comic, I'm sorry. So this comic book came out, you're looking at actually number 0 there, the free comic book day. It came out in May of 2013. This was a free comic book day, trash can giveaway comic, The Steam Engines of Oz. Love this book. Fun, stylistic, kind of punk, you know, steampunk. But then it was popular. People were saying, no, we need this comic, we need this comic. So they launched the comic from that. But the first one now, the one that was free, I was looking online the other day just to see, because my copy is a little beat up, and I want to see, you know, to get a replacement. And the free comic now you can't find for under $100 anywhere. So such is the life of comics, I guess. Visitors to Oz. Listen, Oz is big business all around, right? Supergirl has been there. The X-Men have visited more than once. Deadpool doing his best Dorothy before he blasts the Munchkin. More of the X-Men, they go back and forth. There's the new series Rebirth from DC has Harley Quinn on the Yellow Brick Road chucking a brick, is how they start it. So they've got her all in the Dorothy garb, and she's got a lion, scarecrow, and Tin Man behind her. So a lot of people have traveled to the Oz universe, if you will, in their comics. You see it all the time on books and TV commercials and movies, just kind of everywhere. So that's the show. I didn't want to take too much away from the time that we have to talk. I wanted to make sure that we got all that in, and I want to go back to this. Plus, we've got 12 minutes left, and I want you to tell us, what do you see for the future of Oz comics? So the Oz universe, I'll preface it by saying this. The Oz universe is growing still, right? NBC did the Emerald City. They had The Wiz Live on TV. As the musical kind of reborn. There's another series that's in pre-production right now that may or may not go forward. It's an Oz medical drama, because who doesn't need that? Got Marvel getting back into it, redoing the Oz books, right? So you've got all this new creative. You've got the new Dorothy in the Land of Oz that's on the animated show that's on TV on one of the kids channels out there. So you've got a lot of Oz out there. So what was Oz? I know you guys are talking about kind of the next installment. So what do you have in planned for us? What do you got in mind? What's coming?
Well, I mean, first we're finishing this arc. This is that's the very first thing. But then we actually have the series scripted out to about 40 issues. So we have it was meant to be a trilogy of sorts, where you know, it was the things that are taking place in the first couple arcs, you know, escalate and move into time lapses, right? So, you know, it's like time passes, here's another arc, time passes. So eventually what we were hoping to do, and this may actually end up being the second arc, was to kind of go into the far-flung future of what Oz looks like. We see a very different Oz than we're familiar with, and it's kind of about going back and piecing it all together as to how it got to this place it is. And it's more, I mean, it's almost a detective style, right? Where you are the reader is the detective trying to piece things together, figuring out where things you know, went very, very wrong, and have changed the narrative a bit here.
How much do you stick to the Oz, to Baum's Oz characters, like the basic traits of, you know, Dorothy Gale and the lion and et cetera, of the characters that are in the books? Do you try and stick it all to their kind of basic characteristics, or have you flung those out the window and you're going where, you know, no one's
No,
right?
no, I mean, at the core of the characters, I mean, that's what I use as the basis. I mean, and I think towards every character has their natural progression and evolution in terms of where, you know, they build on it, you know, towards where they're going next. And, you know, if we take it in the what is considered canon and what most people are familiar with, the way I approached this was, especially with the core characters like that, was how has this changed them? How is this new sense of courage and heart, and, you know, how is that, and brains, you know, what does that mean for what they are going forward? And with each story, with each arc, there's continual growth. So with some of those more exciting but ancillary characters, like you know, we have Jack Pumpkinhead in there down the road here too, which
Right.
I'm very excited for that. And it's about thinking about the traits that really excited me when I was reading about them, and but given it its own kind of artistic license a bit, you know. So it captures the spirit of who those characters are and allows them to breathe a little bit more, because this isn't just, the idea is that it's not just contained to that story, you know. It's this you know, continual progression.
Right. And then Kelly, I have a question for you. When you get art, or when you get the pages rather, from Ethan, how do they come to you? Do you get a page at a time? Are you getting a full book? Are you working on it as it goes? How are you getting stuff in? And then part two. So you were talking about hand drawing stuff versus the iPad that you've now progressed to. What is the new Woe Is Oz going to look like? Is it going to be mixed media, or will it be the hand drawn kind of look?
Stylistically, it'll look the same. So my goal would be to kind of keep the same consistency of the art style. So, I mean, and it's progressed since the first issue, up until even like issue 4. That's like more highlights, more details, more like saturated and vibrant colors in it. So I'm going to play off of that. As far as like actually doing it, and what I mean about by hand drawing, it's like actually doing it on paper versus doing an entire production inside, like, so, you know, on your iPad, you kind of have that capability now. Because back when we first started working on this, there was none of that like in existence, so you had to do it traditionally. But it was kind of crazy because I had so many different ways of doing it. Like the first issue was completed in Illustrator, like the whole entire book is Illustrator. Which is like a vector-based program that, you know, it's not like it's like intense workflow, you know. So
so it's easier. So the time it takes to do it is less with the new technology now.
It's just all in one. So you don't spend time like scanning an image per se. You have everything in your
all in one place.
Yeah, and it's all saved on your device, you know, and you just have more control over time. You can go other places and draw. So if you're at a coffee shop, you can draw that now. But, you know, it used to be like that. But you can be more portable is the point. And you can get the same level of quality. You can work faster. So that's really the idea behind it. But since I started drawing on paper, you know, I kind of just continue to do it that way. And then they really more just to kind of keep that consistency. And then it's fun because I've been trying to do digital for so long that it's just not the same. It's never going to be the same. But
and drawing on paper makes for nice future museum exhibits. Did I mention that once already? I don't know if I did or
no.
I just throw that in there.
I do have a lot of original artwork it's just sitting around. So
and wouldn't it be nice to share that with the world?
So you know, for something, I guess.
One more question for you, Kelly. What do you feel any? Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. I don't want to jinx it. Do you feel any pressure? Listen, comic books are a very tactile thing, but they're also very visual, right? Nobody walks up to a stand and reads the whole story to decide if they're going to buy the book or not, right? You look at it. The art is what sells it. No offense, Ethan. The art is what sells it, though. So the story is what makes me buy the second issue. right? First issue is entirely based on the artwork. So when you look at a project like this versus an animation or something like that, do you think about that? Does that play in at all, that like this is going to make or break? This is what the cover has to be because this is, this is the money piece for this? Or does that not, do you not factor that in at all until I said it out loud?
Right? No, actually, then there's actually no pressure. I think for me, it's just more of doing the production of it, like actually the time that goes into it. There's a lot of time and effort and energy that goes into it. And I feel like, the face value of it is just the fun part, because then you could take all the artwork, because I mean, we've done that before. We've done a Kickstarter before. And it was fun taking bits and pieces of the artwork, the best of that the I guess the brand has to offer, right. Put it all in just one presentation. It's one of the things I really like to do as a creative. But yeah, looking back at it, it's just you're talking years apart. So I would do things so differently now compared to what it was like in 2008. But stuff that didn't today, I said, man, that actually looks good. I really want to like take this and redo it somehow, So that's what I'm excited. That's the biggest reason why I'm excited to get into these next 2 issues, because there's a lot of stuff that's already pre-built, and all I have to do is like really just finish it. So the only pressure is trying to figure out like how fast we're gonna do it. I think that's kind of like, okay, can I get this done? And because I keep thinking to myself, I can, but I'm fooling myself in.
And that was gonna be my last question for Ethan. Was what's the time frame from the time that you say, okay, I have a story in mind now, I'm going to put it on an outline, I'm going to write it down, and then from then till the finished product till you're ready to say, okay, this is ready to sell. Hey, All Things Oz Museum gift shop, you ready for it? What's the time in between there? How long does it take to come to print?
Well, to come to print, I mean, it's just, Kelly is very meticulous in terms of how he does his images. So, I mean, I don't like to rush his style, and because I think, there's a nerd in me that's like, yeah, I want this now. I want to read this now. But then there's also the part of me that also understands that, when an artist is doing, is creating their craft, I don't like to rush that process. So, because I feel like the audience ultimately benefits from it. So, and so for the pages, it just depends on, if the inspiration hits. So there's been some days where, where it's come together incredibly fast. And there's some days where, sometimes in between issues, it's a bit longer. But I mean, I think this is one I probably would have to pose to Kelly in terms of when we think it's going to be, because I don't want to put that pressure on him. But and I would love to see it.
He'll be ready next Thursday. Yeah, Kelly, you got that?
Whenever it's able to be there is when I'm excited to see it. I do think that we are on course to having it sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to put words on Kelly here in terms of what his thoughts are, other than to share my excitement that it is moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I just started back on production on issue 5, so it's got to go through and start penciling. So we'll see how long it takes.
Well, listen, on behalf of all the,
I got some thoughts to speed it up. So
there you go. On behalf of all the, now that you're going to be thinking about how it's the only thing that's going to sell any comics, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Thank you on behalf of all the Oz fans, all of us here at All Things Oz. Appreciate you guys taking the time today to talk to everybody and to kind of tell us what's going on in Woe in Oz. It was a neat experience to get both Ethan Tarshish and Kelly Brown on with us. Sarah, if you're there, if you want to go ahead and unmute folks and see if there's any questions, we'll take a couple questions. It's really at the end of the time, but as long as the guys are willing to hang them in there too.
Oh, sure.
Questions, we'll go ahead and take those.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute everyone. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, I think you should all be unmuted. Maybe.
Definitely maybe.
Unmute all. Where'd that go?
Anybody have anything or? Maybe no one is unmuted.
Maybe they muted themselves again.
No, I must stay muted.
You can also type a question in the chat if you aren't comfortable talking in a microphone, or if you don't have one.
All right. Well, if there's no questions, I think we covered everything. And thank you.
Just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you. That was really fascinating. I appreciated hearing the history and hearing all about all of the comics. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks. That was fun, everybody. And NOPL, I think, has recorded this session, so they'll have it available for people to watch after too, who didn't get to join us live. And again, my thanks goes out to the Northern Onondaga Public Library, Ethan Tarshish, who writes the Woe Is Oz series, Kelly Brown, the illustrator, who brings Woe Is Oz to life. Your time, we appreciate everybody having us, and thanks, Sarah, for inviting us along today.
Yeah.
Thank you for
having us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right.
You too. Thank you.